Most people believe strategic thinking comes from intelligence, confidence, or having more information than everyone else. But what if the real advantage is something far less obvious? What if the people who consistently see opportunities before others are simply the ones who can tolerate confusion longer? Think about it. The average person encounters uncertainty and immediately tries to escape it. They rush toward conclusions, labels, and quick explanations because ambiguity feels uncomfortable, almost threatening. But the pattern breakers? They stay inside the uncertainty a little longer, and that changes everything. Because when you resist the urge to solve a paradox instantly, you allow deeper patterns to emerge. Patterns other people never notice because they already convinced themselves they understood the situation too early. Psychology shows that the human brain is naturally wired to dislike ambiguity. Uncertainty activates stress responses similar to physical danger. Your mind wants closure. It wants certainty. It wants the fastest possible answer so it can relax again. But in a world that grows more complex every year, premature certainty has quietly become a liability. Especially in 2026, where information moves faster than understanding. The people who thrive are often not the fastest thinkers. They are the people who can remain mentally steady while reality stays unclear. And once you understand this, you start seeing why some individuals consistently make better long-term decisions, create more original ideas, and adapt faster than everyone around them. Because superior strategy begins where simplistic thinking ends. The first thing to understand is the psychological trap of premature certainty. Most people are not actually searching for truth. They are searching for relief. The moment a situation becomes emotionally uncomfortable, the brain looks for the nearest explanation to reduce tension. This is called cognitive closure. Research indicates that humans have a deep psychological need for definitive answers. Once the brain locks onto an explanation, it becomes resistant to new information, even if that information is more accurate. And this is where strategic blindness begins. Imagine two business owners facing a sudden market shift. One immediately says, "The problem is obvious. Customers just don't care anymore." That conclusion feels satisfying because it creates certainty. But the second person pauses. Instead of forcing an answer, they sit with the contradiction. Sales are dropping, but engagement is increasing. Customers complain, but they still keep returning. The data conflicts. And instead of escaping the discomfort, they investigate it. Eventually they realize the real issue isn't lack of interest. It's that customer expectations evolved faster than the product experience. That insight only appeared because they tolerated ambiguity long enough for the deeper pattern to reveal itself. This is the difference between reactive thinking and strategic thinking. Reactive thinkers rush to remove uncertainty. Strategic thinkers study it. And if you've always felt frustrated by people demanding instant answers from complex situations, there's a good chance your mind naturally operates at a deeper processing level than you realized. The second insight is that superior thinkers learn to hold opposing ideas at the same time. Most people think in binaries, good or bad, success or failure, right or wrong, but reality rarely works that way. Research in psychology suggests that cognitive flexibility, the ability to entertain multiple conflicting perspectives simultaneously, is strongly connected to creativity, emotional intelligence, and long-term strategic success. In other words, the strongest thinkers are often the ones least attached to simplistic certainty. They can acknowledge that two conflicting ideas may both contain truth. For example, a company may need stability and radical innovation at the same time. A person may feel confident externally, while internally struggling with self-doubt. A relationship may be loving, while still deeply unhealthy in certain areas. Most people feel psychological tension when contradictions appear. But high-level thinkers lean into that tension. Because paradoxes are often signals that something important is hidden underneath. And this is where truly original strategies emerge. Not from choosing one extreme, but from discovering the third way hidden between them. History is full of people who succeeded because they resisted binary thinking. Instead of asking, should we move fast or carefully, they asked, how do we design systems that allow speed and adaptability together? Instead of, is this a failure or a success? They asked, what information is this experience revealing that success would have hidden from us? That shift changes your entire relationship with complexity. You stop viewing paradoxes as obstacles and start seeing them as coordinates pointing toward high-value opportunities. The third insight is that ambiguity tolerance can actually be trained. Most people assume their discomfort with uncertainty is permanent. It isn't. Psychology shows that the brain adapts to repeated exposure. The more time you spend navigating uncertain environments without panicking, the more psychologically resilient you become. Think about someone learning to swim. At first, the water feels overwhelming. Every movement creates anxiety. But over time, the nervous system stops interpreting the environment as dangerous. Ambiguity works the same way. You build gray space stamina. And one of the best ways to develop this is deliberate exposure to situations where answers are incomplete. Reading books that challenge your existing beliefs. Having conversations with people who think differently than you. Starting projects before you feel fully prepared. Traveling unfamiliar environments. Making decisions with partial information instead of waiting endlessly for certainty. At first, this feels uncomfortable, but eventually your mind stops needing immediate clarity to feel safe. And that changes how you approach life itself. You become calmer in chaos, more observant under pressure, more adaptive when circumstances suddenly change. And perhaps most importantly, you stop confusing uncertainty with danger, because uncertainty is not always a warning sign. Sometimes it's simply the doorway to deeper understanding. The fourth insight is probabilistic thinking. One of the biggest mental traps people fall into is the yes or no mindset. They want guarantees. Will this work or fail? Will this relationship last or not? Will this idea succeed or collapse? But reality almost never operates in absolutes. Superior strategic thinkers replace rigid certainty with probability. Instead of asking, "Am I completely sure?" they ask, "What is most likely based on the available evidence?" This sounds simple, but it changes decision-making dramatically. Because once you stop demanding perfect certainty, you become more adaptable. Research indicates that people who think probabilistically tend to make better long-term predictions because they update their thinking continuously instead of defending rigid conclusions. Imagine investing in a new opportunity. The amateur waits endlessly for certainty and misses the moment entirely. The reckless person ignores uncertainty altogether. But the strategic thinker acknowledges the unknowns while still moving forward intelligently. They understand that every decision contains risk. The goal is not perfect clarity. The goal is informed adaptability. And this mindset creates emotional resilience too. Because when outcomes change, you don't feel psychologically destroyed. You simply update your model and continue moving forward. That flexibility becomes a massive advantage in unpredictable environments. The fifth insight is intellectual humility. This may be one of the most underrated psychological strengths in existence. The more intelligent someone becomes, the more aware they usually become of what they do not know. Meanwhile, insecure thinking often clings desperately to certainty because uncertainty feels threatening to the ego. Research shows that intellectual humility improves learning, decision-making, and openness to new evidence. And this matters deeply for strategy, because ego-driven certainty blinds observation. If someone becomes emotionally attached to being right, they stop seeing reality clearly. But intellectually humble people remain curious. They observe longer, listen deeper, adjust faster. And this doesn't mean lacking confidence. It means separating confidence from rigidity. A strong strategist can say, "This is my current conclusion, but I am open to updating it if new evidence appears." That mindset is incredibly powerful, because reality constantly evolves, and the people who adapt fastest are often the people least emotionally trapped by their previous assumptions. Finally, there's the question most people struggle with. How do you act decisively without having all the answers? Because ambiguity tolerance is not about endless overthinking. It's about remaining functional while clarity is incomplete. And this is where many high-level performers follow what's often called the 70% rule. The idea is simple. If you wait for 100% certainty, you will usually move too late. But if you act with roughly 70% of the necessary information, you can adapt along the way faster than people who stayed frozen, waiting for perfect clarity. Strategic execution is not about eliminating uncertainty. It's about building enough flexibility to move intelligently despite it. Think about pilots navigating turbulence. They do not wait for the sky to become perfectly calm before adjusting course. They continuously adapt while moving forward. And life works similarly. You will rarely possess total environmental clarity, but you can still move with conviction. You can still make thoughtful decisions. You can still build meaningful things. The goal is not certainty. The goal is responsiveness. And once you truly understand this, ambiguity stops feeling like an enemy. It becomes a source of leverage. Because while others panic inside uncertainty, you remain steady enough to observe patterns they completely miss. That is where superior strategic thinking is born. Inside the gray space, most people are desperate to escape. So if you've spent your life feeling unusually comfortable questioning assumptions, if you naturally pause before rushing toward conclusions, if you often see complexity where others only see simplistic answers, that may not be indecisiveness. It may actually be a cognitive strength. a sign that your mind is built for deeper processing in a world increasingly dominated by surface-level certainty. And perhaps the greatest transformation happens when you stop asking, "How do I eliminate uncertainty?" and start asking, "How do I become stronger within it?" Because the people who shape the future are rarely the people who claim to know everything. They are the people resilient enough to think clearly while nobody fully knows what comes next. If this video resonated with you, subscribe for more psychology insights about human behavior, personality, emotional intelligence, and the hidden mental patterns shaping your life. And remember, the ability to remain calm inside ambiguity is not weakness. It is one of the rarest forms of psychological strength.